Tragedy at SeaWorld. It happened without warning. A killer whale grabbed a trainer who'd always dreamed of working with orcas and pulled her underwater.
Clara Whitmore was more than just a dolphin trainer. She was a woman who lived for the ocean and the creatures she loved. But behind the beauty of her work came a dark and chilling story.
SeaWorld is keeping a close eye on a killer whale blamed for killing a trainer.
In her final moments, something unexpected occurred, shocking everyone who knew her. This video takes you inside those terrifying last moments, showing how quickly a dream life can turn into a nightmare. What began as a normal day at the marine park ended in tragedy, leaving witnesses stunned and the world asking questions. Join us as we reveal the terrifying details. Number 12. Last Moments of Clara Whitmore. On February 17th, Ocean World's star orca, Ragnar, turned a routine show into tragedy. Clara Whitmore, a beloved trainer known for her bond with whales, sensed his unease that morning, but pressed on. Before a full audience, Ragnar hesitated at cues. Then, without warning, seized her arm and dragged her underwater. For 7 agonizing minutes, staff tried distractors and nets, but Clara never resurfaced alive. At 12:08 p.m., her body was recovered. The illusion of control shattered, leaving spectators stunned and Ragnar branded an assassin, his decades of captivity erupting in one violent, unforgettable act. So how many more trainers met a tragic and terrifying end like Clara Whitmore? Let's find out. Number 11. Dawn Brancheau's unfortunate demise. Dawn Brancheau wasn't just a trainer at SeaWorld Orlando. She was the star. Families traveled from all over the country to watch her perform with massive whales, creatures that seemed to leap through the air with perfect grace under her command. To the cheering crowds, it looked like a flawless bond between human and animal. But behind the bright smiles and choreographed routines, a much darker truth lingered. Dawn had dreamed of working with marine animals since she was a child. She studied psychology and animal behavior in college, dedicating herself to understanding creatures that most people only ever saw from a distance. After graduation, she worked with dolphins in New Jersey, gaining the experience she needed to land her dream job at SeaWorld. Within just 2 years, she achieved what few ever could. She became a whale trainer. Her life quickly became a mix of discipline and passion. Training with orcas required more than knowledge. It demanded full physical strength and endurance. Dawn swam, lifted, and conditioned her body constantly to keep up with the demands of performing with such enormous animals. Soon, her face appeared everywhere, on SeaWorld billboards, advertisements, and even merchandise. She wasn't just a trainer anymore, she was the image of the park itself. One of the orcas she worked with most often was Tilikum, the largest whale in captivity. Weighing more than 12,000 pounds and held in marine parks for over 3 decades, Tilikum was a towering presence. Over time, Dawn and Tilikum developed a bond, and those who knew her said she treated him with patience and kindness. Yet even she understood the danger. Years earlier, Dawn had spoken about the risks of working with such powerful animals, acknowledging that no amount of training could completely tame them. On February 24, 2010, just after the noon show ended, Dawn was at the edge of the pool during a routine interaction with Tilikum. Guests seated in the dine, watching as she lay beside the massive orca with her face close to his. Then, without warning, everything changed. Tilikum lunged. Some witnesses believed he grabbed her by her ponytail, while later reports claimed he pulled her by the shoulder. Either way, in an instant, she was dragged into the water. A trainer, who once seemed in control of these incredible animals, was suddenly powerless against one of the ocean's most fearsome predators. The crowd watched in shock as the attack unfolded. This was not a quick, tragic accident. Tilikum refused to let go, thrashing and dragging Dawn beneath the surface again and again. The struggle went on not for minutes, but nearly an hour. By the time it ended, the bond between trainer and whale had shattered in the most horrifying way imaginable. While Tilikum had Dawn in his grip, the pool turned into a nightmare. He thrashed brutally, tossing and dragging her with a force no human could resist. Trainers on standby rushed to intervene. They threw nets, waved food, and shouted commands in desperation. But nothing made him release her. Tilikum was in complete control, and he wasn't letting go. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, staff managed to lure him into a separate medical pool. Only then did he release Dawn's body. But the damage was already done. What rescuers pulled from the water was far beyond anything they had ever expected to see. Her injuries told the horrifying truth. One of her arms had been torn off. Her scalp was gone. She had broken ribs, a shattered jaw, and a severed spinal cord. The medical examiner would later rule her death as a combination of blunt force trauma and drowning. For 45 agonizing minutes, Tilikum had refused to let her go, keeping her lifeless body beneath the surface. In the days that followed, SeaWorld faced a wave of questions and criticism. Tilikum was removed from public performances and spent the rest of his life in isolation, floating listlessly in a back pool with little stimulation. He remained this way until his death in January 2017. But Dawn's death also brought something deeper into focus. It wasn't the first time Tilikum had been involved in a fatal incident, and it wasn't the first time people asked whether captivity was warping these animals. Orcas in the wild swim hundreds of miles across oceans, hunting and living in tight family groups. In captivity, they circle the same small tanks day after day, forced to perform tricks for food. Imagine being locked away for life. Your freedom stripped, your world reduced to concrete walls. How long before your mind begins to break? For Tilikum, that breaking point was devastating. Dawn Brancheau's death forced SeaWorld to make changes it had resisted for decades. Eventually, the park announced an end to its captive breeding program for orcas. But for many, the decision came too late. Too late for Tilikum and far too late for Dawn. From one tragedy to another. But what exactly went wrong at Loro Parque? Keep watching to find out. Number 10. Alexis Martinez, last day at Loro Parque. For most of his life, Kyuquot had never known the ocean. He had never hunted wild prey, nor traveled alongside a pod through endless open waters. Instead, he was born in captivity, raised to follow commands, and trained to entertain crowds. At Loro Parque in Tenerife, Kyuquot was a star attraction, drawing tourists who wanted to see a whale up close. He had even been transferred between marine parks, shipped from one facility to another to perform. But by late 2009, something inside him had started to shift. On December 24th, as the park prepared for its Christmas show, Kyuquot was in a training pool with 29-year-old Alexis Martinez, a seasoned trainer who had worked with orcas for years. Alexis knew Kyuquot well, and their sessions had always been smooth. Yet that day, something felt different. Kyuquot seemed distracted. He missed simple cues, moving sluggishly and floating silently near the surface. Alexis stayed with him, perhaps sensing the change but not knowing how dangerous it would become. Another staff member watching noticed something unusual. Kyuquot deliberately positioned himself between Alexis and the stage platform, as if blocking his path, refusing to let him leave. Then, the underwater stage signal was given. Time for Alexis to swim away. But Kyuquot followed, slowly at first. Then, with growing force, he closed the distance. From the side, another trainer signaled commands that had always worked in the past. This time, Kyuquot ignored them. He pressed forward, using the tip of his snout, the rostrum, to drive Alexis forcefully down to the bottom of the pool. Panic rippled through the team. The trainer on land switched to backup signals, desperately trying to regain control. For a moment, it seemed to work. Kyuquot rose calmly to the surface, exhaled, and took a breath. But the calm lasted only seconds. With a sudden dive, he returned, this time with Alexis balanced on his rostrum, his massive mouth still closed. Then, without warning, Kyuquot released him. Alexis sank slowly through the water, limp and motionless. In that instant, everyone watching realized the nightmare had begun. The pool descended into chaos. Trainers scrambled to isolate Kyuquot, but he resisted. He lingered near the gate, circling slowly as if toying with them. Only when a safety net was dropped into the water did he finally move into the adjacent pool. That brief moment of separation gave the team just enough time to recover Alexis's body from the bottom. The damage was catastrophic. Alexis had suffered massive internal bleeding, multiple organ tears, and severe compression fractures. Bite marks scarred his body. There was nothing anyone could have done to save him. The post-mortem left no doubt. Alexis Martinez had died in the grip of an orca. What made it even more tragic was that this wasn't completely unexpected. Concerns about the conditions at Loro had been raised before. Experts warned that the tanks were creating an environment of frustration, boredom, and emotional strain for the whales. In the wild, orcas live in complex pods led by strong females who help maintain balance. But at Loro, the social structure was unstable. Without that guidance, Kyuquot and the other whales were constantly adjusting, fighting for dominance and routine. The boredom was so severe that trainers often saw the orcas ripping strips off the metal and plastic lining of the pool just to have something to do. Animals designed to swim vast distances across oceans, hunt with precision, and live in tight family groups were reduced to circling shallow tanks with nothing but walls to contain them. Their instincts twisted under the pressure, and eventually something had to crack. For Alexis, that crack came on Christmas Eve. His death left behind not just grief, but a sobering lesson. Forcing powerful, intelligent, and deeply social animals into tiny enclosures for human entertainment carries consequences. Orcas are not machines built for shows. They are emotional, complex beings, and when their freedom is stripped away, the results can turn deadly. Before Brancheau became Tillicum's victim, it seemed like she wasn't the first. Stay tuned to find out more. Number 9. Kelty Lee Byrne's tragic end. On February 20th, 1991, 20-year-old Kelty Lee Byrne, a Canadian student, animal trainer, and competitive swimmer, arrived for her shift at Sealand of the Pacific in British Columbia. Like many young trainers, she was working with orcas to earn extra money. That day, she was tending to 3 whales, Tillicum, Nootka IV, and Haida II. None of them had ever taken a human life before. By the end of her shift, that would change. Witnesses recalled the moment Byrne slipped and fell into the whale pool. Almost immediately, the water turned deadly. She screamed, thrashing, as one of the whales grabbed her foot and dragged her under. Panic filled the air. Every time she struggled to surface, another whale pulled her back below. Even when she appeared to lose consciousness, the orcas refused to let her go. Rescue attempts failed. Trainers tried desperately to intervene, but the whales blocked them at every turn, as though guarding their new plaything. Only after a large net was used to retrieve her body did the ordeal end. The coroner ruled her death an accident, but to many who witnessed it, nothing about it felt accidental. In the days that followed, Sealand made a drastic decision. The park would close. Its orcas, including Tillicum, were sold to SeaWorld. By January 1992, Tilikum was transferred to SeaWorld Orlando, where he would spend the rest of his life. At Sealand, he had already been suffering, confined to a medical pool barely larger than his own body, often bullied and raked until he bled by the 2 older females he lived with. That environment, experts later suggested, may have twisted his behavior in ways no one fully understood at the time. Kelty's death might have faded into history, but it resurfaced nearly 2 decades later after the death of Dawn Brancheau in 2010. Some experts interviewed for the film argued that what happened in 1991 wasn't random aggression, but the result of years of psychological torment. Orcas at Sealand lived in cramped, shallow tanks, and Tilikum endured repeated misconduct. Steve Huxter, the head of animal training at Sealand, offered a chilling perspective. They never had a plaything in the pool that was so interactive. They just got incredibly excited and stimulated. No official motive for the attack was ever determined, but the tragedy left its mark. Kelty Byrne was the first person assassinated by captive orcas, and her story became a haunting reminder that these animals were never meant for tanks, tricks, or human entertainment. One would think that one tragedy would change things. However, it got worse. Keep watching to find out what happens when a person gets dragged underwater for 9 minutes. Number 8. Ken Peters' 9 minutes underwater. One of the most disturbing cases of orca aggression took place at SeaWorld San Diego on November 29, 2006. The star of the show that evening was Kyuquot, a massive female orca who had performed countless times before. Trainer Ken Peters entered the pool for a routine stunt known as the rocket hop, where the whale propels the trainer high into the air. But this time, the trick didn't go as planned. Instead of launching Peters skyward, Kyuquot suddenly turned and clamped down on his foot. Before anyone could react, she dragged him violently beneath the surface. For the next 9 minutes, the pool became a stage of pure terror. Kyuquot pulled Peters deep into the water, holding him down. Every so often, she brought him up just long enough for him to grab a desperate breath before dragging him back under again. This wasn't hidden from view. Hundreds of visitors in the stands watched in horror, and cameras caught every moment of the ordeal. Eventually, Peters found a narrow chance to escape when Kyuquot briefly loosened her grip. Other trainers rushed into action, stretching a safety net across the pool. That barrier slowed Kyuquot just enough for Peters to swim clear. She still tried to follow, but he made it to safety. The veteran trainer survived with a broken foot and multiple puncture wounds. It could have easily been far worse. What made this incident even more alarming was that it wasn't the first time Kyuquot had attacked him. Back in 1999, she had similarly targeted Peters. Now, 7 years later, the same whale and the same trainer had collided again, this time in front of a live audience. Peters later downplayed the danger, insisting he didn't believe Kyuquot wanted to assassinate him. He compared the risk to driving a car, knowing accidents can happen. Even while being dragged underwater, he claimed he felt she would eventually let him go. But others weren't so sure. To many, this wasn't an accident at all. This was a predator pushed beyond its limits. Experts who studied the footage suggested there may have been another factor at play. During the show, Kyuquot's calf had been vocalizing from another pool. The sounds may have stressed her or triggered a protective instinct, fueling her aggression. Whatever the trigger, the attack raised questions that SeaWorld could not easily dismiss. Kyuquot lived until 2017, when she was euthanized after suffering from an untreatable case of pneumonia. By then, she was between 40 and 42 years old, a long life for a captive orca, but one marked by stress, isolation, and tragedy. Her attack on Ken Peters remains one of the most haunting reminders of captivity's cost. Orcas are not built for tanks, tricks, or crowds. They are built for oceans, families, and freedom. And when all of that is stripped away, the question isn't if something will break, it's when. How mysterious and tragic was this next person on the list? Let's find out. Number 7. The Mystery of Daniel Dukes. On July 6, 1999, SeaWorld Orlando staff arrived in the morning to a scene that would haunt them for years. Drifting in the massive orca tank was the body of 27-year-old Daniel P. Dukes, draped across the back of Tilikum as the whale swam laps around the pool. Dukes' death became the second linked to Tilikum, and one of the most puzzling. SeaWorld insisted Dukes had broken into the park after hours, hidden until closing, and climbed into the pool on his own. They claimed he drowned, suggesting recklessness or mischief had cost him his life. But the coroner's report told a more gruesome story. Dukes' body was found severely mutilated, bearing injuries far beyond what simple drowning would cause. Little was known about Dukes' life. He was a drifter from South Carolina, described as eccentric, restless, and deeply drawn to nature. He had a record of petty theft and had lived without stable housing for some time. These details were repeated endlessly in the media, painting him more as a nuisance than a victim. SeaWorld echoed this narrative, calling him unstable, unhygienic, and odd. What was often lost in these portrayals was the fact that he was still a young man whose life had ended violently. That night, no security footage existed to show what had happened inside the tank. At 7:25 a.m., SeaWorld placed the 911 call. When investigators arrived minutes later, Dukes' lifeless body was pulled from the pool. His parents later filed a lawsuit against SeaWorld, but it was quickly dropped, and the story faded into obscurity. For more than a decade, Daniel Dukes' death remained little more than a footnote in Tilikum's history. It wasn't until the 2013 documentary Blackfish that his case was revisited with any real depth. Animal welfare groups argued that Dukes was unfairly dismissed in life and in death, his humanity overshadowed by the scandal. The Dolphin Project summed it up bluntly. Daniel Dukes was a troubled individual with a history of petty thefts and questionable decisions, but as a human being, no death is meaningless. Former marine mammal trainer Rick O'Barry offered another perspective. He believed Dukes had been drawn to Tilikum not out of malice, but fascination. To him, Dukes wasn't trespassing for fun. He was reaching out to a creature he felt some connection to. I think the whale probably pulled him down, held him underwater. I don't think they know how often we breathe, O'Barry explained. The problem is that the whales have nothing better to do. They're bored. We literally bore them to death. It's like you living in the bathroom for your life. Daniel Dukes will forever be remembered as Tilikum's second victim, a man whose tragic end was overshadowed by his troubled life and dismissed by a park eager to protect its image. His death raised difficult questions about captivity, about how boredom and confinement can twist the behavior of intelligent animals, and about how society chooses to value or devalue the lives of those who don't fit the mold. Although most trainers didn't survive the attack from their orcas, some escaped with injuries or no scratches at all. Stay tuned to find out how these trainers luckily survived. Number 6. The near-fatal attack on Tamarie Tollison. On July 8, 2002, a routine training session at SeaWorld San Diego turned into a nightmare. 28-year-old trainer Tamarie Tollison was working poolside with two orcas, Orchid and Splash, when the unthinkable happened. Spectators recalled seeing her laughing and engaging the whales, speaking to them as she always did. Then, in an instant, Orchid lunged. Clamping down on Tollison's foot, the orca yanked her into the water. The playful show transformed into a fight for survival. Visitor video captured what unfolded next. Tollison thrashed and screamed as Orchid and Splash pulled her beneath the surface again and again. Every second under the water felt longer than the last, her panicked cries echoing across the stadium. In a moment of quick thinking, another trainer rushed to the adjoining pool and began removing the chain from the gate, a signal to the orcas that Kasatka, the dominant female, might be entering. The bluff worked. Orchid, still gripping Tollison, suddenly released her. It was a chilling reminder that even in captivity, orcas live within a rigid hierarchy, and fear of a more dominant female outweighed the instinct to continue the mistreatment. Badly injured but alive, Tollison managed to climb out of the pool on her own. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors treated her for multiple injuries, including a compound fracture of her arm that required surgical pins to repair. SeaWorld later framed the incident as an accident, part of the risks trainers accepted when working with such massive animals. But to those who watched it happen, it didn't look like an accident at all. It looked like control, frustration, and raw power boiling over. The attack on Tamarie Tollison wasn't as widely publicized as the fatal cases, but it left an indelible scar within the trainer community. It was proof that danger lurked in every performance, every poolside interaction. When two 6-ton predators decided to test their strength, survival came down to little more than luck and quick thinking. Tamarie's near-fatal ordeal shocked many. But was this next trainer any safer? Let's find out. Number 5. The attack on Rokeach. On November 15, 2006, yet another chilling reminder of the risks of working with captive orcas unfolded at SeaWorld, California. Trainer Rokeach was performing a routine session with Orchid, an 18-year-old female whale known among staff for her unpredictable behavior. Without warning, Orchid clamped onto Rokeach's foot and dragged him to the bottom of the tank. In that terrifying moment, he was no longer a trainer in control. He was prey. Witnesses described the struggle as heart-stopping, with Rokeach trapped underwater, helpless, while colleagues on the sidelines shouted frantically for Orchid's attention. It was only after trainer Kenneth Peters persistently redirected the whale's focus toward the stage that Orchid finally released Rokeach. When he surfaced, shaken and injured, the damage was clear. Torn ligaments in his ankle left him limping in pain. Strangely, SeaWorld chose not to send him to the hospital, downplaying the severity of the attack. In response, the park quietly introduced new safety measures, requiring 5 trainers to be present during performances and in-water training. But the changes came too late. Just 2 weeks later, Kenneth Peters, the very trainer who had saved Rokeach, would face his own terrifying encounter with a different orca. Brian's brush with danger lingered, but what happened when another orca struck its trainer? Keep watching to find out. Number 4. Malia's bite. Even decades after earlier attacks, the dangers of working with captive orcas never fully disappeared. On June 13, 2022, a SeaWorld Orlando trainer learned this in the most brutal way possible. During what should have been a routine task, washing paint and food chips out of Malia's mouth, the trainer made a critical mistake. She broke the park's 3-foot rule, moving her right arm too close across the orca's massive jaws. In an instant, Malia, weighing nearly 2.5 tons, clamped down. Witnesses said the whale released her immediately, but the damage had already been done. The trainer's arm and wrist were crushed, leaving her with multiple fractures. She was rushed to Orlando Regional Medical Center, where surgeons worked to repair the devastating injuries. SeaWorld described the incident as an accident, but critics pointed to the event as proof that the inherent risks of forcing humans and apex predators into close contact could never truly be eliminated. Even a split-second mistake can leave lifelong scars. Malia's sudden bite left scars, But what came next was worse. Stay tuned for more. Number 3. Shouka's outburst at Six Flags. In July 2012, visitors at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom witnessed a chilling moment that nearly turned deadly. Shouka, a female orca on loan from Marineland, France, suddenly lunged out of the water mid-show, throwing her trainer several feet backward. The whale didn't stop there. She lunged again and again, each time trying to reach the shaken trainer. The terrifying scene was caught on video by a guest, and it quickly raised questions about Shouka's life in captivity. Unlike other orcas, Shouka had no true companion at the park. For a time, she shared space with a bottlenose dolphin named Merlin, but he had been moved elsewhere, leaving her isolated. Critics argued that this lack of companionship fed her frustration and aggression. Not long after the attack, Shouka was quietly transferred to SeaWorld San Diego. For many, the incident stood as yet another reminder that these powerful social animals can only be pushed so far before something snaps. The chaos in California was shocking, but France held darker surprises. Let's find out what happened. Number 2. Freya turns on her trainer in France. On September 9, 2008, a routine show at Marineland Antibes in France turned into a nightmare. Mid-performance, a 26-year-old female orca named Freya began acting strangely before suddenly dragging her trainer beneath the surface. For the audience, it looked like part of the act until the seconds stretched on. The trainer broke the surface, gasping for air, only for Freya to lunge again. Twice, she jumped on top of him, forcing him back under the water. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the trainer climbed onto her back, but Freya tossed him off with ease. The struggle ended only when he managed to reach the edge of the pool and scramble out, shaken but miraculously unhurt. The chilling attack left witnesses horrified and raised more questions about the unpredictability of captive orcas. Even the most experienced trainers were never truly safe. Freya's sudden attack shocked the crowd, but another orca went further. Keep watching to find out more. Number 1. Kyuquot's relentless attack. In late July 2004, at SeaWorld San Antonio, a routine show spiraled into a terrifying struggle for survival. Steve Eibel, an experienced trainer, suddenly found himself trapped by a massive male orca named Kyuquot. The whale repeatedly launched his body onto Eibel, shoving him under the water again and again, refusing to let him escape. For several agonizing minutes, the trainer fought to stay calm as the audience looked on in shock. Every time he tried to surface, Kyuquot was there, blocking his way, pressing him down, reminding everyone of the raw power trapped in captivity. By some miracle, Eibel managed to soothe the orca enough to slip away, escaping without serious injury. But the near-death encounter showed once again that these whales could turn dangerous in an instant, and that survival often depended on sheer luck. So, what are your thoughts on these trainers who lost their lives doing what they love? Do you think these accidents could have been avoided? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.